Honorable Minister of Communications, Labour, Works and Energy, Paul Lewis, Mr. Francisco Opisi from Exergy, staff from the Government of Montserrat Geothermal Energy Unit, members of the press, ZJB Radio, MNI Alive, and the Montserrat Reporter. Good morning and welcome to this opening ceremony for site visit number 1 of the early market engagement for the Government of Montserrat Geothermal Plant Public-Private Partnership site visit. Today's site visit involves Exergy, geothermal engineering, procurement and construction company that have visited us here in Montserrat. Today's site visit constitutes 3 main areas. One, tour of the 3 geothermal sites, MON 1, 2, and 3. This opening ceremony to be followed this afternoon for our technical presentation and questions and answering. Today's ceremony is going to involve opening remarks from Minister Lewis and Mr. Opisi. We'll first start with Minister Lewis.
Thank you, Owen. Let me thank the press for being here. Let me also thank Francisco of Exergy for making the trip. We do appreciate that very much. We are all aware of the Government of Montserrat giving its commitment to geothermal energy. The Government of Montserrat, under the previous government, would have constructed 2 geothermal wells. And under the present government, we see the ongoing construction of a 3rd well. Actually, one would realize that the wells construction is only the first phase of a geothermal project. The next step or next phase would include a surface plant, that's the generating plant, the geothermal generating plant that would actually produce the electricity. And then you have the phase of transmitting and distributing to customers. We are at this juncture where it becomes necessary to gather or seek information from experts in the geothermal field, and we choose a process called early market engagement, which is considered to be best practices used around the world. This morning, we had the first site visit of the first company to visit Montserrat in Exergy. They visited the 3 wells, the 2 completed wells, and the 3rd well that's under construction. And we'll have an opportunity where the technical team from our energy unit will question the individual for technical information, and of course, vice versa, he will question our team for whatever information he deemed necessary. This is because we are seeking information, and we have an expression of interest to supply design, construction, procurement, and partial funding information to the Government of Montserrat so that we can use that information in the future to make informed decisions. I want to once again thanks everybody for coming here, and of course give Mr. Francisco an opportunity to make an input.
Thank you very much, Mr. Luis. I want to thank the Government of Montserrat for welcoming me here and for the interest demonstrating in asking Exergy to take part in this early market engagement. So we are an Italian company. I am representing this company for the market of the Caribbean islands and Latin America. And we are a binary power plant supplier with a lot of experience in geothermal. Actually, we have 360 megawatts in our portfolio, of which almost 90% is for geothermal applications. we just commissioned one power plant in the island of Terceira in the archipelagos of the Azores, which is going to be very similar to this one. It's a 3.5 megawatt net power plant. So we believe this power plant is extremely interesting for our development in this market, and we are keen to provide the government with any kind of information we can provide to have this project and process going forward and actually getting to the procurement and execution of this very important project for the island and also for us as a company.
Minister Lewis and Francisco, we are at this stage now. I'm sure, Minister Lewis, it's first question to you. The geothermal project, you would have had your site visits and so on, so that Franco could have gotten his view of what is on the ground. In terms of what are the next steps after this particular visit by Franco?
Okay, XSG company happens to be the first one to visit and make a site visit. We are expecting that other companies would also do the same thing, so they'll have a view of what's on the ground, an accurate picture, and then they can provide the same information to us. I think your question is really why do we need to do this, or what's the next step? In that fact that we have 2 completed wells. We have 1 well, hopefully will be completed soon. And it makes a lot of sense to gather the information that is required for the next step, which is the construction of the plant. But one cannot construct a plant without one gather the necessary information. There's a process and a procedure that's considered best practice and is used to gather such information, which we refer to as early market engagement, which is basically seeking information and allowing this company to express some interest in supplying us information based on design, procurement, construction, and a key word here, partial funding.
So the obvious next question is, month 3 is incomplete. What is the next step going forward in terms of that the completion of month 3?
Month 3 being constructed by a particular drilling company and is supervised by another company. The contracts are directly between DFID and those 2 companies. And we expect that DFID, working with those 2 companies, would provide us the information shortly in terms of when they would continue the activity. As you're aware, the activity has stopped for some 9 or 11 months. But it would be premature of me to try to speak for DFID.
So in this case, will it hamper your progress going forward?
Not necessarily. What we're doing, we have an idea what the 2 first wells produce, and that gives us a pretty good, enough information to kind of gauge. So I believe that the companies will need to make some assumptions of what the 3rd well may produce, and therefore the calculations will be based on several assumptions. If, for example, you assume at the worst case scenario that the 3rd well is producing, say, 1.5 megawatts, similar to what's produced for the other 2 wells, then you can make assumption based on that and your calculation based on that. If you want to assume that it's producing better than the first 2 wells and you say it's producing 3 megawatts, you can make an assumption based on that. And so I leave that for the companies and the engineers. They're very equipped, very smart people. They are always doing projections of such a kind.
Good morning, Dwight Sampson from M&I Live Media. I have a question for Exim's representative. I know you spoke briefly to it just a short while ago, but can you tell us of your previous experience in building energy delivery facilities from geothermal and the size, and how would this benefit Montserrat?
Yes, thank you for the question. So we have built geothermal power plants that go in a range from 1 megawatt up to 25 megawatt, the module. So as I was saying before, the reference that we have most valuable actually to Montserrat is the reference we have in the island of Terceira in the Azores, which is particularly important in this case due to the similarity of the resource in terms of its high enthalpy resource, even there, and the similarity of the logistics and execution of the plant. Because it's an island, it's a small island in the middle of the ocean, it's difficult to reach, so it carries with it a lot of difficulties in the execution of the plant. And we were able to execute this power plant on time and well performing, so we are sure that these experiences, let's say, given us the knowledge to execute also the Montserrat power plant correctly on time and as required by the requirement of the government.
Okay. In terms of cost, we know that geothermals cost a bit of money, right? So in terms of Montserrat, do you have an expected cost as to how much the completion for the Mon 3, how much is going to cost your company to take it from where it is to completion, as well as to run the plant here?
So let me tell you, geothermal power plants are usually, the cost is built up mainly from two parts. One is the equipment in terms of its supply, which is relatively easy for us, at least with our previous experience, to, let's say, quantify what's the cost and what's the amount of equipment that we have to bring here. There is another big part of the equation, which is the actual construction. So, and that depends a lot on the local conditions and let's say geographical and local conditions of what we have available to make the construction. And that part is, of course, extremely dependent on local characteristics. So for that reason, I cannot really tell you what we can expect, but I think this process that we are starting together with the government of Montserrat is basically keeping us there, bringing us there in terms of providing us with what is, we will tell the government what is gonna be the information that we need on our side to be sure of what we are quoting and what we are estimating as general costs. And on their side, on our side, we will tell them what's needed, and on their side, they will ask us what more information we will need. And this is part of a process that we are starting now. And at the end of this process, I may be able to reply to your question more correctly.
Good morning, Bennett Roach from the Montserrat Reporter. I did have a rep here, as I didn't anticipate that I would have been able to make this. Thanks to James, my good old colleague here, I was able to make it late, so I'm a little awkward. I feel a little awkward in anything that I might ask. But I did hear you talk about your and pardon me, I don't even have your name. It's
Francesco.
Oh, Francisco.
Correct.
Francisco. So you Exergy, is it a new company basically? Because I'm sure that I heard you say something about having done something and being very familiar with geothermal things before. Is Exergy itself a new company, or it's an old company with some years of experience in dealing with this whole matter?
So we are relatively recent on the market, but the company exists since 7 years now. And as I said at the beginning, we have more than 300 megawatt in operation that we engineered and supply. So, and of these 300 megawatt, about 270, 280 are geothermal. So we know what is geothermal and we know what we are doing. We have our own technology that we supply with our, let's say, in our power plants. It's a turbine that we manufacture in Italy, and we have now 41 power plants in our portfolio. So we have the experience to execute correctly these power plants.
What you're saying is that within your 7 years, you have been involved with developing 41 power plants.
Correct.
Okay. Now, Minister, pardon me again, because I didn't get a chance to really read over the background and so on. But I understand that Exergy is one of several, maybe, people who will come and view the sites and so on and so on. Apparently at their own cost. I thought I saw that somewhere.
Yes, we made that pretty much clear. And the whole idea is that it's a win-win in that the government of Montserrat and the people of Montserrat, we need to get the information from those who are in the business. And the persons who are in the business or the companies in the business, they need to get work and they need to make money. So it's an interest for them to provide us information. Yes, they would have already built into their costs these kind of risk where they would come at their own cost. They may win or they may not win.
Fair enough. Yes, that's it's like coming to be interviewed and
yes,
reporting
for a
back.
job.
But they're going to report back to us, to you.
Yes.
On their findings and what they believe they can do. Somebody might say to you, I ain't touching your problems or your situation. And the reason I say that is because, based on what you said a while ago, there seemed to be some uncertainty still as to whether or not we will be able to use MON 3.
Yes, good question, good insight. None of us sitting around the table at this time or anywhere in the world know what the result of well 3 would be. And nevertheless, God is good, and we have 2 wells already in place. And if you pay attention closely, which I know you normally do, I just want to recall what you would have already seen, that we have a range of 2.5 megawatts to 5 megawatts. And you probably would have asked me the question later, but let me mention it now. That is because we need to be flexible in that we have 2 that produce about 1.4, 1.7 different, just about over 3 megawatts presently.
Each?
No, I'm in combined. And we do not know what would be the result of well 3. But as I said, we will have to do some forecasting and predictions. However, let's say the worst case scenario is that well 3 produce nothing. Then it can be used as a reinjection well, and we still have over 3 megawatts available.
My next question, I would have preferred if Mr. Francesco might not have
Answer?
been. No,
that
he would not hear this question. I don't think he
should
be privy. I don't think
he could close his ears.
He should be privy to what I'm going to be asking you about, because it's really like housekeeping.
Okay.
So if you would give us, after he would have left, if you would have given us
okay,
just
no
2
problem,
minutes
no problem,
afterwards,
no problem.
I would ask the
question. I'll organize that.
But otherwise, I think that's pretty much it. I would hear from something else.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Honourable Minister, I'm still a little bit apprehensive going forward about the results of the drilling process and where MON 3 is concerned, because a fairly substantial amount of money has already been, placed into that construction. Now, waiting on those results or having those results in your possession will give you a better idea as to the arrangement of your public-private partnership to move the whole process forward. I know that you would have said that you're going to gauge it and forecast and so on, right? But I'm still a little bit apprehensive as to going forward without having that result of the drilling in your possession, the overall results.
Well, yes, I understand your concern. It's a fair question. And of course, as I said, well, let me just provide you additional information in that our understanding is that the completion of the well, including short-term and long-term testing, would be done during the period leading up to 2018, perhaps close to the end of 2018, and you'll have what we will consider then perhaps more accurate idea of what the production or the yield for the well is. Yet that does not prevent us from gathering these other information at this point in time. It just means that the final report would be closer to the end of 2018. So we are being proactive. If we get the final report towards the end of 2018 and we have this initial information gathered and these companies are able to do whatever preliminary work they need to do, they just need to fit in that final figure. And then we will be in a position to speak to our funding agents at the end of 2018 or early 2019. But if we wait until that time, it means that we would have lost an opportunity and we would not be in a position maybe for the next year then to speak to our funding because we would not have the information. And this information is key for both sides to make informed decision.
Just for the record, Mr. Francisco, your company, if given the opportunity to enter into a public-private partnership with the government of Montserrat for the completion of Mount 3 and for the execution of the geothermal process on Montserrat, your company will be willing to enter such a partnership?
Again, this is part of this process. Later this afternoon, I will share with the government some information of our company and, let's say, our financing possibilities. If it's so, all part of this project is exactly replying to this question, right? So, what is this project about? What we have to do? What the government wants us to do? And in the end, express our interest. Or even not, but I think most probably yes, to the execution of this project.
So, with no more questions that the reporters would like to ask a few questions, not in the presence of Francisco. So
Okay, yes, thank you for offering us the few minutes to speak with you on some matters preceding to this, and as I said, kind of housekeeping to me anyway.
Yes, I understand.
Your remarks in your answer to James a little while ago, that DFID had, in fact, you actually said for something we would have to speak to DFID to find out what happened in between there. But I had always been concerned, ever since I heard previously Zimbabwe government used to speak to us about the updates, et cetera, regarding the development of the geothermal project. And unfortunately, I've never been around when Martin Dawson, the DFID rep, was saying to the press that the project was his now, which is the time you're probably referring to when DFID took it over. What I want to know on that is how come it got to that stage? What happened that the government was, as it were, locked out of what was happening?
Okay, I wouldn't quote or pretend to quote your choice of words, but what I will say in my choice of words is that at the start of the drilling of the third well, DFID decided that they would be responsible for the contracting of the drilling company and the contracting of the supervising company. Then DFID decided that the government of Montserrat would carry out certain activities which included purchasing of the land, the EIA, the preparation of the same site, and also the construction of the drilling pad. We were also responsible, or given the responsibility, for the drilling of the port in Plymouth to allow for the dredging, sorry, my bad, the dredging of the port in Plymouth to allow for a deeper draft, or greater draft, for the large ship to bring in the actual drilling rig. In terms of why DFID took that approach, I do not have an answer. And perhaps it's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. and that's where we're at. So it means that in terms of reporting, naturally, if DFID has a contract, which they do with the drilling company would report to DFID. And at one point in time when we did have you refer to a project manager that sits at MCWL, and as I said before, however, there is no contract with the drilling company and the government of Montserrat. The contract is with DFID and the drilling company, DFID and the supervising company, and therefore that's naturally the reporting lines.
Okay, so we are at a state now where I noticed the talk about the private-public partnership. PPA, or PPP is what has been referred to over the last 5 years. And so are we committed to that at this point?
First of all, let me just say something before I answer that question directly. If the funding agency decides to fully fund the geothermal project, if they decide to fully
the funding agency being DFID.
If they decide to fully fund this project, this exercise that we are undertaking will still be necessary, because they would need to get this information as well. We are all aware of the visit of a couple of months ago by Engineer, and we heard for ourselves. It was on public radio. The discourse, which spoke to DFID only wanted to commit themselves to the exploratory stage and no further. Since then, I was fortunate to accompany the Honorable Premier to a meeting in London where we had an opportunity to have an audience with the minister responsible for DFID and also with Engineer himself, where I would have raised my concerns about the counterproductive results, if you want to put it that way, of having 3 expensive wells being constructed and DFID not contributing or committing to any further funding going forward. It was then made clear that they have a better understanding as to the whole concept, and that we, however, need to go out to gauge the market, see what's out there, what's possible, and then come back to DFID. We would not want to be accused of not doing so, because then when you try to have any further negotiation with them, they would just simply say you did not do what you were asked to do. So we want to play it wise and use wisdom, and we'll be doing what we're asked to do, and then we'll go back when we have the information.
So, so as you say, we are doing what we agreed to do.
Yes.
Keeping up the partnership. It's all about anyhow.
Yes, yes.
No,
you are the reporter, so you're better with words than I am.
I'm being mischievous. And yes, let me correct us. Thank you very much for saying that and for showing that you weren't really locked out. It's just that it's the way they functioned, and then you were given certain responsibilities.
Yes.
So that you're really, in a way, a part of what had been going on.
Yes.
It's that the report that we got, it was as though the government was, and we didn't hear anything from the government really.
No,
in all what you're doing.
I think you put it well. We are playing a particular role. They're playing a particular role. Some person might want to debate whether or not that should be so. But in life, things are always debatable.
Yeah. Now, with regards to, I know that in the meantime, we had some, I'm moving a little bit now from strictly geothermal, that we had moved into a energy situation, and I noticed a reference being made to an energy team. So we now have an energy team. How is that comprised?
Okay. The energy team, let me just first say, I like to, every opportunity I get, to commend my staff here at MCWL, because they are a type of staff that I don't know what university they study, but they are capable to handle several things. And therefore, the energy team that you're referring to, the energy team is made up of personnel who have other roles, a substantive role, but they have been filling in from since the first wells, and they have some knowledge, and they return to give, they continue to give their input and support. To move to the question, you would have remembered some time ago that there was a commitment to form an energy unit. And somewhere along the line, that seemed to have rolled over the hill somewhere. However,
Was that under your government?
no, that's under the previous government.
Correct.
You will remember that.
Yes.
It rolled over the hill somewhere, I don't know which hill. But so far, under the present government, we decide that it's important and that we're going to take the initiative to do so. So we have in place one so far, the Assistant Secretary, Senior Assistant Secretary for Energy, and we have, during the last budget, we approved a position for the Director of Energy. So that's a post that we're in the process of trying to recruit somebody to fill. So it's a good question because it's a great move. You need an energy unit to champion all this whole sustainable energy program that is being initiated by the government of Montserrat.
I know that we
So
have
thank you
been-
for that question.
Yeah, my pleasure, Minister. We know that the whole energy thing, and we've been doing quite a bit, I recall, about with regards to solar, for example. But I just wanted to know whether the whole thing, including the geothermal, if our energy is being built around, our future will be built around geothermal, wind, solar, and even diesel.
I don't know where you ate this morning, but you seem to be on the ball. But indeed, the lettuce. Well, I like the question because the energy policy and the sustainable energy program, we want to encourage moving away from the fossil fuel to renewables, but we would not be able to move away right away overnight. Therefore, your question is really appropriate because we presently have the diesel plant and we are at, well, should I say the final stages of the procurement for a company to construct the solar, utility scale solar, or the first phase of the utility scale solar plant. And then once that's constructed and it's on the grid, it would be exactly what you're saying, a combination of some renewable penetration on the grid along with the diesel. We're hoping to get to the other phase will take us to, the first phase, by the way, is 250 kilowatts, and we're hoping to get to 1 meg with storage. After that, we are hoping that this process that we are initiating with the geothermal, that will reach a point where both the government of Montserrat and DFID, the funding agency, and the government, of course, the government, they're working on behalf of the British government, that we could all agree and commit going forward so that we can have a combination of geothermal, solar, and see diesel being used as a backup. And of course, we have not disregarded wind or any other form. It's just that we're thinking at this point in time, when we consider what we have, our resources we have, geothermal and solar seem to be at the top for now.
Minister, this last question now is the whole question of our partnership and where we are suddenly. In your meeting with the ministers, were they able to...
One minister, actually.
In London?
It was one minister, just the
minister.
minister.
The minister.
Yeah.
Were they able to tell you why that change in their approach in dealing with us, in terms of saying that we have to find, because nearly every project, I believe, major project that we had been looking forward to, going all the way back, because I'm a strong person of promoting this whole SGP thing that we had, that they have moved away, except for the PPP in certain things, for certain things, to be telling us now on things that they had already agreed to. I will say that from my point of view as well, we always knew that when it came to moving into the plant to get the geothermal being made available, that there was always that question. It was there, that we may need to do that. But I think they were always prepared to support that. Did they explain as to what it is that has caused them to shift from carrying out that obligation that they
Well, in that
promised to
particular
us?
meeting, I don't recall that that explanation was given. And if it's given, perhaps it's given to a level above my pay grade. As you know, I'm only a minister, you know, and I sit within a government. So perhaps it's given above my pay grade. I'm not sure, but it was not given in that particular meeting. Of course, yes, there are certain comments that was made that be mindful that there are cuts being made in Britain as well, and things like that. But as I said, I cannot say that that's the reason. There were just a number of, you know, things that came up and hinted, but there were no official discourse, official report, or reasons given as to the change in mindset. So I cannot speak to that. Sorry, I didn't eat my lettuce this morning, but
Minister, I would like to continue on that same line that Bennett touched on. I'm disappointed that they would have assumed the responsibility that's differed for the third well, and now that it ran afoul, that they are basically changing their mindset about supporting or continuing towards the end of the completion of the well. And I feel...
let me stop you there. I think they're committed to completing the well. So
they are committed
to completing the well. I think
so
the question...
we didn't get that clear.
I think the question, they are committed to completing the well, whatever process is being used, and they're also committed to the short-term and long-term testing, which should take somewhere, as estimated, to the end of 2018. I think that was what somebody was hinting about, or you were hinting about when you asked about going ahead and getting information before getting the one for the third well. What I think the reporter was asking is the overall commitment to the project. As some people sometimes tend to forget that geothermal project is not wells. Wells are just one aspect of it. Mm-hmm. You have the generating plant, and you have the distribution and systems and so forth.
Yeah, Honorable Minister, yes, I know that. Yeah. But it can't happen without them.
Right. No, my correction, I just was correcting you that on the well aspect of it. I think what you meant was the commitment for the project overall.
Yeah, and the reason why I said it, because there was a time when this whole issue of public-private partnership was thrown out, well, in previous government.
Yes.
And then it dropped out of the discussions altogether. And then I don't know what was said to this present administration in terms of the continuation. But now we're hearing that public-private partnership coming back again. So was anything explained to you about this going forward?
Well, as I said, in terms of, I could only go back to Engineer's visit, and he made it clear to everyone that their commitment was to the point of exploration, and after that they could not commit. As I said, it was fortunate enough that I had the Honorable Premier allowed me to have an audience with the minister along with himself, and that was responsible for DFID, and Engineer was present. Engineer, he himself was able to if I say one for a better word, give clarification that what he meant was for us to go out and come back to them for them to consider. And I guess perhaps it was not the most appropriate for him to say that they weren't going to be committed at all. But probably what's more appropriate is what was said in England, that we should go out and then come back for further discussions and let them see what level of commitment.
I know we also, as the press, we had our issues with him as well. He was given instructions to basically come and tell us, and we knew he really could not tell us anything. He was telling us basically that it's up to the government of Montserrat to determine the next steps, which he couldn't give us a clue as to what those next steps were.
Exactly.
So we ruled him out actually at that point.
Yes. So
yeah. So You mentioned about the solar
Yeah.
and the stage at which we are at, and going forward. I'm not sure if we were given an update. We were
So an update on.
on the progress of the solar project.
Yeah, we were giving an update, but let me tell you, you know, there are always people better than me in the room, and so I'll let Mr. Owen Lewis give you a more accurate update.
All right.
In terms of the update of the solar, we are in the procurement process, so we have to be very guarded in what we say. But the first round of bids came in. They've been evaluated, and the evaluation report has been presented to the Public Procurement Board with a number of recommendations. We are waiting the formal written response from the Procurement Board in terms of which recommendation they approve, and we will take it from there in terms of completing the procurement process.